Okay, we are live. Welcome to episode 16 of BenThere. This is going to be a treat today, as they always are. I can't wait to get to this one. It's not only someone I've been wanting to chat with, but also a really good friend from a couple years back. So those of you that are watching, thank you. We had a little bit of a delay. Apparently, we had the wrong email address. That's my fault, not his fault. So, but welcome to a Saturday edition of BenThere. Just want to make sure those of you that are watching for the first time, the concept of the show is pretty simple. Everybody's got a story. Ours just usually on this show, happens to be those that grew up overseas. My guest today didn't actually grow up overseas, but he raised a family overseas, and that's exactly why. And he's still overseas, so I can't wait to talk to him. Before we get to that, though, those of you that are watching, please make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel and interact with us as well. If you're watching live, make sure you're interacting with us. This is an opportunity for you to ask questions too. It's not just about me and the questions I have from Mr. Kevin Haggith here in just a second, but it's an opportunity for everybody to ask questions. So thank you for watching. Let's get right to it. My guest today, I'm going to go ahead and mute. I guess we never heard the music. Kevin, did you hear that music?
I did not.
Oh, well. It happens. This is so high tech, Kev. Let me tell you, right? Just like the email fiasco. But I am super happy to make sure we welcome Mr. Kevin Haggith, who is originally from Western Ontario, Canada. Kevin has been the principal of Shanghai Community International School, the lower school on the Hongqiao campus. His personal journey began in Canada and has expanded it with his family throughout Asia and the Middle East and parts of Europe. Kevin expressed initial interest in photography and filmmaking, which led to a degree in communications, which followed later by studies in environmental science and economics. Eventually, a career in teaching led to a degree in education, followed by a master's degree in administration and leadership. His principal qualifications came through Ontario Principal Counsel. His overseas career has ranged from being the learning technology coordinator in Hong Kong to an administrator in Canada, Kuwait, and China. He returned to China in 2015, and that's actually where I met him. He has been which has been a wonderful experience with hopefully many more adventures yet to be had and many interesting people to meet. Kevin lives in Shanghai with his wife, Janette, and is the proud father of 4 adult TCK children. We're going to talk about this in just a little bit, Kev, but I want to welcome you to the show, Mr. Kevin Haggith. How are you, brother?
Ben, how you doing, buddy?
It's been way too long. It's funny, before we went live, you and I just chatted about this. We should be doing this more.
Absolutely.
This is a treat. Welcome to the show. Usually when I introduce people, I make sure that they understand that I kind of, even though I give the brief bio, I want to make sure that the people watching and the people that are going to watch on replay here, first off, before I even get into that, I also want to make sure that people understand this will be shown again, because I know, Kevin, you got up early for this, maybe early. It's 9 a.m. Shanghai time?
Yeah.
Ish.
Yeah.
You got up early-ish, right? So, yeah. But I do appreciate you doing that. So, but yeah, I always offer the opportunity for the guests to kind of give kind of a recap of what they've been up to the last 20 years. I know I kind of did a brief bio of you, but what the hell have you been up to the last 20 years, man?
Jeez.
Go ahead and talk.
That's a long show, man.
Yeah, go for it.
And for me, 20 years only takes me halfway back. So.
Yeah.
Hey, it's funny. Like I think we all appreciate, or hopefully we do appreciate, what's the journey that's brought us to where we are. And for me, I can get amazed still daily by what's around me, and I think I take that back to where everything started from. When you said southwestern Ontario, you asked
did I mess up? I messed up already, huh?
No, you're there.
Okay.
You initially, I know we talked. You said, "Okay, what city?" And I was as far from anything city-like as possible.
Okay.
The neighbors your neighbor's a bike ride down the road. Like there's
Okay.
nobody. You can look out your house and see fields, and I love that. So nature was everything I was about. And now I'm so far away from that. Shanghai, I wouldn't describe Shanghai as an intense city. It's not like Hong Kong or Tokyo, or where life is racing around you. It's not. But we've come to love city life. But so for me, it's very small, rural Ontario, very quiet. Always when I grew up, it wasn't the way it is now. Like we recently did a little trip, and you can go online and see videos of everything. There, when I was growing up in Southern Ontario, you'd see a movie every now and then. I remember watching, Lawrence of Arabia and Dreaming of the Desert, and and then it was, different things. You'd see a movie that have a jungle, and you dream of the jungle. So all these dreams of traveling and the mysteries of the world started a long time ago. When your world was as big as maybe a mile in each direction,
That's
around
awesome.
you.
Yeah.
But grew up, actually married a high school sweetheart. We met in high school, and we separated off to do our universities, and then got married afterwards, and got right to kids and life right away. And our first child's over 30 now, so it's with a baby, and during that whole time life is moving along so fast, and it seems like, geez, I can go back to that small town life and rural road in a moment. But during that whole time, we went out and we did what we had to do. We got degrees done, and we lived on nothing for many years. And ask me what was an income at the time, it would have been negative whatever student loans we had to get us through. My wife, Janette, was all about teaching. She grew up being the teacher. Her mom was a teacher. She just dreamed of it, and that's who she was. For me, it wasn't that way at all. Like, my ADD sort of span, I went through 5 or 6 illusions of a career, and then I went off towards economics, did business. At one point, wanted to be the movie maker, the whole bit, and ended up in teaching. And I think I appreciate all those backgrounds now. Those are all things I brought into my classroom as a teacher. We did I used to build up frames, and we did animation, Russian animation, like still wanting to make those movies, films and stuff like that, and bringing that into the classroom to captivate kids who really couldn't care what was in the textbook, but wanted to create something and bring something together. So all those bits and pieces, it's funny, you build, and you put in your suitcase, and the trick is to bring it in the classroom so both you and your kids are engaged. And for me, I spent 15 years in mostly upper junior intermediate classrooms. And when you're sitting with your kids, 13, 14-year-olds, you have to work like crazy to keep interest going. And I love teaching. I love working with the kids, and we found something that fit the kids in my room every year. My last year of teaching was probably my most difficult for sure. And I think in teaching, it's the difficulty comes with the payoff too. Like it was my probably most challenging. The kids probably brought the biggest challenges to me as a teacher. Like, are you ready for this sort of thing? And at the same time, my greatest rewards feeling like you make a difference in kids' lives, and you get a chance to to move them to the next level and prepare them for what's to come with them, and which transitioned me over to administration. We Janette and I got going. We had 4 kids in tow, and 2 boys, 2 girls, and we were doing the Canadian thing. You'd come home. We go to work on Mondays. You'd come home every night. We'd hit the ground, feed the troops, and you'd head off in literally 4 different directions. Going to soccer fields and after school jobs, and we loved it, but you ran you all the time, and we. Like every day was in our own different worlds and doing things, and we loved it. I love teaching in Ontario. Ontario has an amazing education system, and I would say that for me, it would be my favorite system, and we loved it. We weren't angry at Joe. We loved what we did, but we wanted to see the world. We wanted more. We wanted life to become a little more random, a little less predictable. And we started looking for jobs overseas. And I remember trolling initially. We started, very safely, Northern Ontario, and then started looking to Western Canada, to North America. And the first real job that we applied for overseas was actually in Africa, Kenya.
Oh, wow.
And that was the hook to get our kids in. And by this time, our oldest two are teenagers. By the time we get to the younger one, she didn't get much of a voice in it. But they would actually sign her name to documents they would submit to us. Like Janette and I went out to the movies one night. We came back home, and our kids had a meeting in our absence, and they laid out a decree of what overseas life was going to look like, and from their version of sitting in small town Ontario. And they laid out a list of things that we had to go overseas. This is what they were willing to buy into. And it was awesome. And looking back on it now, some pretty insightful things, some ridiculous things. But they laid out some things like they didn't want to be homeschooled. They wanted to participate in whatever school life or community.
Wait, hold up. They did or did not want to be homeschooled? Did not. Refused. Okay, good. Yeah.
They were not going to go overseas to be taught by mom or dad, who were quite capable, but they weren't going to stay at home. They were going to participate in whatever school was there. And looking at it now, I'm thinking like awesome insights for at that point, probably 15 and 13-year-olds. And they laid out different things. And one of the one was like, it had to have Kentucky Fried Chicken. Critical stuff.
Priorities.
Had to have access to KFC, so I may tell you something about our diets. But they labeled some things, and one of the things they put down there was kind of interesting. They at that point they said they weren't interested in going to Asia, and as the writing's on the wall at this point, and we said, well, being the adults, our job is to. We listen to the kids, respect them, but the adults make the decisions in our house. They do. The bottom line comes down to mom and dad. And so we had great conversation with the family, and we got this job on the line to Kenya. And we had done the research. We looked at everything. We were all moving. And we've got the final lines of the interview, the stages. It was like we had the jobs in the bag. We had all moved. And everybody in their mind, we actually started a couple close friends telling them, it looks like we're going to Kenya. We're going to be working there. And we had done our research, and we were starting to imagine the savannah and life in Africa. And at the last minute, the job got pulled because we had 4 children. Oh. And it was devastating. It crushed us all. We were all moving overseas. We were dreaming of African adventures. We were excited. We had let go of Paris, Ontario, a small town, and we had in our minds started this journey to Kenya. And when they pulled it out from us, because of the board actually back in the States turned it down, saying they weren't going to support 4 children, and I get some of the reasoning in that, but it was hard for us, and it left us hanging nowhere. Like we didn't belong in Paris, Ontario anymore. We had already in our minds were international travelers, and had dreams that were going to be beyond our small town, and but there was no recipient for us at the other end. And this is getting late into the recruiting season. The overseas recruiting season is generally, a lot of the action happens November, December, January, February. You get much later than that, and you're starting to get very late in the recruiting season. And for us, this is getting into May. And so we thought, well, that's done. It's over. And so Janette reached out, and she had met someone in a course in the summer, and Kelly, and she had given her a business card, and Kelly worked in Hong Kong. So we thought, okay, let's give her an email. We'll see what happens. And we emailed her, and just incredible. Our email arrived. We get the story afterwards. Our email had arrived to Kelly in Hong Kong at the Canadian International School, a fabulous, wonderful school, incredible building, everything. It beautiful. And our email arrived, and Kelly saw the head of school walk by her classroom and walked out into the hall and said, "Hey, Dave McMaster. Dave, listen, I got this family who's interested in working here." And, he's at that point, I was teaching grade 6. Janette was teaching grade 3. And she says he had 4 kids, but a grade 6 and grade 3 teacher. He had just lost a couple that had a grade, there were grade 6 and 3 teachers. And we fit perfectly. And so all of a sudden, late in the recruiting season, he's got a couple with good backgrounds. By this point, we've both been about 15 years in education, and and we fit. And on Dave's a character, and Dave's going in there. And we also had, which was critical overseas, we had a possible hockey playing friend for his son. And so, he saw a quick bond there between a couple of Canadian boys that are familiar with hockey, and some culture there that they could get together with. And we got the nod. We moved to Hong Kong, and honestly, both Janette and I would describe we stayed 2 years. I had a 2-year leave from our board in Ontario, and we probably lived at if life has a measurement on that scale of 1 to 100, we lived at 90 to 100 for 2 years, and all the rules and regulations and stuff you self-monitor your life in Ontario went out the window. Here's and we were responsible adults, and this time we got a daughter who's she'd be 17 at the time, and the
you still there?
Yeah,
there you are. Okay,
and so we started taking on Hong Kong life, and the school treated us amazingly well, and but we'd be out to they had dinners at the Hong Kong Jockey Club, if you know it. Very exclusive.
I totally know it. Place. Yeah. You forget. I don't know if you remember, right? Yeah, I lived 3 years in Hong Kong, so I know Hong Kong well. Yeah, go ahead.
So they treated us. We'd be out on a Wednesday night, and someone would say, "Hey, listen, we're going for a drink somewhere, going out for another bite. Do you want to?" And it'd be 11 o'clock at night on a Wednesday, which in Ontario means at 11 o'clock on a Wednesday, you're pushing your limits already. Mid-work week, oh my gosh, get home. That sort of activity is saved for a Saturday night maybe. And we you stayed in the city, and we'd find ourselves coming home on a bus late at night, or just doing things because we wanted to do them at the time, and enjoyed it. And we met some amazing people who were on their own adventures, and you just all of a sudden your conversation involved the world, and it just went from talking to people. Well, where were you? Oh, we just did a trip. We were in Northern Africa. We went to Egypt. Oh, listen, we were down in Singapore. Listen, we were in the Middle East. And all of a sudden, your conversation, you're talking the world. And we were just on fire, and our brains, our levels of enjoyment. It was funny. We had an initial 2-year contract, and at that point for Canadian, you had to give. I think it was January 1st was the deadline to say, whether you're going to continue on with your contract or not. And I remember hearing one of those third culture kids' speeches when we got there, and they said it would be about, I think it was 16 months before you can officially call a place home. Mm-hmm. And said at about that 16-month line, research will tell you that's at the point where you realize you're either buying in or you're not. Either it's becoming home, and this just becomes part of who you are, or you're not. It's not going there. And we made the decision, and within a month of making the decision to come back to Canada, everybody went over that line at about 16 months, and we all went over that line and thought, oh my gosh, what are we doing? Like, Hong Kong is our home now. Like, this is we love the culture. It was just amazing. Everything every day, a walk to get groceries, bus trip on the way home, a day at school, a conversation.
What years are we talking right now? What years are we talking?
Where are we now? This would be like 95, 96 in there. Yeah. No, 05, 06. Sorry, wrong decade. 05, 06. Yeah. It's easy when you get them stacked up. We're just realizing that we were leaving what we really wanted. We continued with the process, but on the way out of Hong Kong, and 2 incredible years at Canadian CDNIS, we decided we're coming back. Mm-hmm. And I think this is a conversation Ben's having with himself, and probably daily.
Every day. Yeah. Go ahead.
It becomes embedded in who you are, but I also looked at for me, I looked at some of the people there, some of the administrators around, and I was sort of at that point in my career. That was a goal for me. And I thought, okay, when we went back to Canada and let's get our stuff together. I finished my master's degree. I went and got my Ontario Principal Counsel papers, to 2 years to do that. And I started through my own school board of getting all my qualifications. I took everything possible, every clinic they offered, PD and sort of things, and started pouring. I wanted to become as attractive as a professional package as possible to get back overseas and get into an administrative job. So we went back to Ontario Life, and honestly, like we arrived back in it would have been early July. In September, Janette and I can pretty well both envision the evening. We can't pull the day out, but the evening. One of our parent protocols that we always studied everything, even about being parents. And one of the things was taking care of each other and resetting our day each day. And so we would do that. We'd take care of the kids, do dinner, do soccer games, whatever. And Janette and I would go for a walk around our little town at night. And we did that every night. And we'd catch up on our days, and we talked, we dreamed. It was always good conversation. But it was in September already, and we're both looking at each other, walking around. And it's a lovely town. We love Paris and Otterville. Our towns are our go-tos when we get back home. We love them dearly. But we're walking around at night, and we're realizing there's nobody outside. There's nobody on the street. It's like 7:30 at night, and we're looking through living room windows at blue screens, and people in their backyards away from the streets. Whereas Hong Kong life and stuff, there's people on the street. They're selling food on the street. There's always something to watch, to see. You're running into people all the time, and just that constant interaction. It changes that level of human interaction that you need in your life. And in September already, of that first couple of months of being home, we're saying we're going back. We're going overseas, and that momentum started from there. So we did our stuff. Janette, we love teaching Ontario. It's a great place. And dearly, you're always balancing out the family aspect. Our families are close on both sides, and wonderful supportive families. And we always we take from them, we give to them, hopefully, and we take from them a ton, and we realize we're also taking 4 kids, we're taking 4 grandkids away, we're taking 4 cousins away, nieces, nephews. So it's always that balance of things. But that journey was the whole family saying, okay, when are we doing this again? And so within, it was about the 3rd year back, start getting a call from the friends. All right, listen, I've got a job for you. Listen, you got this. If you got your principal stuff together, you got a possible one. Applied, and we end up heading back to the Middle East. So we went to, we were off to Kuwait. Other than the war, the Iraq War, knew nothing about it.
I was going to ask you that. Like, had you ever been there? Was there
no?
Okay.
Some of the stuff you do, it's like, oh my gosh, like, I try to respect it as much as possible. Recruiting now, especially with someone just coming overseas for the first time, and it's like, it's huge, and you don't know, like when you drop into a new environment, it's not holidays, it's not going, down to Cancun to your resort holiday. It's like everything around you is different. Everything you see, the smells are different. How the water tastes, how that familiar thing, like it just everything. And you coming over, you're full to here. You're just, and we try to respect that with new staff coming in and realizing like the last thing they need is us talking at them all day and trying to teach them new things. It's like, you know what? Their brains are full. They're functioning high, even if they're smiling and there's excitement coming out. It's exhausting. We went into the Middle East and oh my gosh, we had some incredible experiences, and the learning was so intense. We're happy for her time. I'm glad we went into the Middle East.
How long were you there? How long were you in Kuwait?
5 years.
Okay.
And in that time went from vice principal to principal. Janette went from teacher, literacy coach to PYP coordinator. So our careers moved along. Kuwait did what it does for a lot of people. It's a great launching spot for careers. But just like the day, like I can remember walking with my son, to school. By this time, we're down to 2 kids.
Yeah.
And like we walk down, like it's a street and the cars and sand on the road. Like there's, sand blowing around all the time. We walked around a mosque to get to our school. So you're hearing the call to prayer on the way to school. You're interacting with Muslim men coming to the mosque back and forth. And you're dealing with a new climate. You're dealing with it's a Muslim country. There's all kinds of new things to take in, and it's the first real time we're confronted fully on just about every aspect of your life, your beliefs, and it was just one of those 100% learning situations, which I believe is a real benefit for children overseas.
Yeah. Yeah, what an opportunity. Yeah. I look at it like what an opportunity. Yeah.
It's just like, we write a curriculum there, they talk about the written curriculum and the taught curriculum, what's presented. And then there's the learned curriculum, which kids actually take in. On that learned side of curriculum is the things that is the unofficial, the environmental curriculum, if you want, the surroundings that, like, I think of what my son and daughter learns by, watching kids go through like Ramadan and the different festivals and how they would conduct themselves around, for us to deal with the mosque and how to be respectful of what was going on. We're not Muslim and stuff, but learning to be respectful of their faith and for me, dealing with our Muslim teachers, and it was wonderful. Miss Huda is someone, she was the head of the Islamic department for me, and we had fabulous conversations, and she's still one of the most respectful people I have ever met. And she'd be the first one running into my office to say, Happy Easter or Merry Christmas.
That's great.
And for me, go back and coming from Toronto, Ontario area, a very politically correct area. And we're at, the conversations back, in a school, should you be saying Merry Christmas? And me still carrying on my Ontario background, where it's still in some areas, you can't, you shouldn't really be celebrating that. And here's this fully covered Egyptian Muslim woman running into my office, Merry Christmas, some great things like that. But it really challenges like how you look at yourself. But we did 5 years. At the end of 5 years, I think we had explored. We'd gone to Israel, we'd Jordan, UAE, Bahrain. We'd really explored the Middle East and loved it, and great lessons. And Turkey, still one of my favorite areas of the world. And we applied out, which is always a big risk-taking thing. We put full in, and each time we've gone into change, we've put both feet in and said, whatever's out there, there's something for us. It's, it was like Malcolm Gladwell's, it's not the tomato sauce. There's not one, there's many great tomato sauce. And, I always try to counsel teachers doing that. It's not one job for you. So stop worrying about the one. There's 5 to 10 awesome jobs for you. You just need to land somewhere in that basket of good jobs. And, we got lucky, and we ended up at Shanghai Community International School in Shanghai, and a wonderful, supportive community. We got hired, brought in, and oh my gosh, Shanghai is just I can't think of a city that can offer you so much, but at the same time take care of you so well. We all sort of look for our Western comforts at times. Shanghai's full of Western food if you need it, the art gallery, the music, the evening out listening to blues and jazz, entertainment galore. At the same time, you get access to Chinese culture and some amazing people and events. And it's just a super place to land. The school we're in, we're just going to be starting our 6th year coming up. And it's just, it's a place where, as you know, that's hard to leave. It's just outstanding, and it's kind of neat watching the world situation now going on with the COVID situation, everything we've been through, this crazy roller coaster that we're all doing, but doing it on the Shanghai side and going back and forth. That has been the last 6 months have just been incredible from us from here to how we were on an overseas trip when we found out when the country shut down. We got sort of
Where were you?
Stayed out. It was hardship. It was great hardship. We were stuck on the Gold Coast of Australia.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. That's right.
Yeah. Yes. And then watching China, they started with the situation, and I know it was a huge response they put into the situation there, and it was an overwhelming response. But it was just like to see how it's gotten under control here to the point of now we had the crazy adventure getting back into Shanghai.
Yeah.
We've done our quarantines. Janette, she's trying to get my wife back into the country, blowing a small fortune on one of the last flights to get her in the country before it closed down. And then too, as well, having staff caught outside the country, which we feel for all the time. But it's a crazy ride. But now after going through quarantines and very strict quarantines, like not, I hear the quarantines say, well, we're only allowed to go out to get groceries once a day. So, okay, no. We had a sensor on our door that we could not open the door on their apartment. Wow. And if it opened the door, I get a message from my IE and say, is your door open? We were only allowed to open the door to receive food in, like our groceries, or we had a nurse who visited our apartment twice a day, and she would come in and take our temperatures and record our temperatures. But and Janette had a COVID test on the way in from the airport. So,
wow.
But to get through all that, you can tell all the protocols are in place, but life is looking pretty normal here in Shanghai. We went out for dinner last night. We walked around through a mall. They brought it around full circle. So there's 20 years in
that's awesome.
20 minutes.
No. By the way, and so much I want to dive into here. Let's start. We're going to kind of backtrack here in a minute, but let's start by, okay, so you're from Canada, obviously, and you ended up overseas. You lived in Kuwait. Now you've been in Hong Kong. You've been in Shanghai. Your kids have been along for the ride. Where do you feel to this day? Like, where is home for you? Is it still Canada? Where is home?
And that's an interesting question. Like down through my kids, I find more fascinating than me. For me, we put in, how old was I? Late 30s when we went overseas. So by that point, and for two, we attached to our parents. Ontario is definitely home, but it's a different home now. Like I'd say I'd still consider it home, but I look at home differently for what it is and what it brings to me. But we're still small town Ontario people for sure.
No, I get that. I'm a small town Idaho boy, so you and I have always clicked on that end. So I get it totally. It's funny when you think back of where, you took your first breath. You walk your first steps, all that stuff. And I drive by it every time I leave from Salt Lake and I head up to Boise. I pass the town I was actually born in. It sounds a lot like where you're from, and it's just like, wow. I'd say 90% of the people that are from the town that I was born in have never left that town. Not right, not wrong. Yeah. But
there's things I like, my parts of both Janette and I's family are the same. Janette's brother has lived in town all his life. And there's aspects of that I realize when I go back and we're sitting, that's of huge benefit to him as well. And the connections that he has with his friends and his community that I'll never have, because it's like everything else, as you spread that out, you dilute it as well. So the intensity of being in that small town and spending and investing a life of connections and friendships and experiences, there's a huge benefit to that. We know that we won't get that, or we hope to maybe reclaim a little bit of that someday when we retire back to our small towns, maybe, or wherever. But yeah, I don't know. Like I feel we've diluted it a little bit, but yeah, if you had to nail us down, if Janette was here, she would come back. It's Otterville, Ontario, no questions, no pause, nothing.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with you. It's almost a bittersweet thing because I catch myself thinking like what it would have been like if I would have stayed in one place. I never knew that. I mean, I was on the go from the year, from 2 years of age till now, still technically. But yeah,
Mm.
I get it totally. I mean, it was a small town where I was born, but would it have been easier? Probably so. Would I have been able to see and get to do the things and see the world the way I see it? Probably not, right? So it's
Mm.
just a situation of it's not better, it's not worse. It's just it is what it is. So it's yeah, totally.
Uh,
I totally get that.
I
Yeah.
like the diluting, so like
Hmm.
I think when I was in Kuwait, there was a gentleman. He was like the husband of one of the staff at our school, and he had come through. He was his brother was in Syria, trapped in Syria at the time,
Hmm.
and every Tuesday night we would go to this Turkish restaurant and we'd sit and we'd eat bread and have coffee, and he had talked about Islam. I would ask him about Islam and Christianity, and we talked the world, and I would hear from from the Muslim side and talk about the Christian side that I'd represent. And we talked about everything. We talked about meeting our wives. We talked about life's like. We talked about the 5 pillars. We talked about heaven. What does heaven look like? And you have these conversations with people that are countercultural to what you've been sort of taught or raised or supported by, and it just it spreads you just want to know more, and it just my understandings of people are, I don't want to say tolerances because it's allowing something, but I guess it's a love and appreciation of what other people have. This same now talking with my Chinese friends and stuff here, like
Hmm.
I just can't get enough. I mean, there's a bookshelf behind me, you'd see it's full of Chinese history. That's my craving now is um, Chinese history. And if I can recommend to you one I just finished reading is called Has China Won? And it's looking at the relationship between China and the US. And some people will find it hard. It's written by a gentleman who's one is Sarit Fakaria, who's a CNN host.
Hmm.
Some of his research is brought into it frequently, and then but it's actually written by a Singaporean diplomat. But Has China Won? And it's sort of looking at that struggle that we're all looking at, but from a third party perspective, a Singaporean diplomat to the UN, and it's a super cool book. But that's so I've always felt you got to take on where you're at and take on, like we take on big city life. There's no fields. My view
Yeah.
outside goes about 100 meters into the next building.
Are you still in the
I live
same
on
apartment?
we've stayed put.
That's
When you got it
awesome. So
right,
I know.
don't
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I know exactly what you're talking about,
yeah,
man. So yeah, that's great.
yeah.
No, that's great. I wrote that book down. It's a book, yeah. I'm assuming not a
I
podcast or anything like that.
Well, it can be. You can do it as an audiobook, and I've gotten into that. Just
Okay.
I've needed that break of sitting and having someone reading to me. I'm appreciating that now,
Yeah.
and just go in. But oh my gosh, like some of the things, and quite frankly, I think as an American, I would be curious for you to read it and what
Hmm.
your response is and stuff. So I think there's some things challenging on both the Chinese and the American side, and it's written by, like I say, a Singaporean in there.
Okay.
But he references stuff from both sides. But I think that's what this whole journey is about, is challenging. It's like for me to sit down with my Muslim friend and sit down there and talk to him and open conversation, not politically correct conversation.
Hmm.
It was open conversation, and to get that permission with somebody on any topic is incredible. And for him to say, listen, and he's going, hey, ask. I'd rather you understand. And him coming into me, and we talked, and we talked about some wonderful things, and he was more appreciative of me asking, maybe even, I'm sure what must have seemed to him to be stupid questions, and him to do the same on the other side. And we didn't argue, we discussed, we provided proposing opinions, but at the end of the night, we spent a wonderful time, about an hour and a half, chatting with each other, getting to know each other's worlds better, and me taking a bit of his world and him taking a bit of mine. And it's funny, he ended up recently immigrating. He is now in California.
Oh wow.
That was his goal. So yeah, he's able to immigrate to the States with his family. Yeah, that was his goal. So
And see, I love that. I love hearing stories like that because I mean, well, you and I go way back, but that's what this is about. It's just about people understanding each other, and we don't get to do that through politics. We get to do that through open conversations and dialogue, right? That's
Mhm.
what's missing so much of so much of what the issues are in this world that we live in are just they can be summed up. I'm not going to say fixed, but they can be understood, right? Just
Yeah.
simply by talking and having those open conversations, having that dialogue. That's what it's about. That's why I like you. I mean, I totally enjoy people and respect cultures and respect what, different opinions and perspectives. And that's not a bad thing. Why are we so scared to have those conversations, right?
No, and you pick on something, like there's such an edge right now, and I don't understand it all, and that's not who I mean, you can tell me whatever from the viewpoint, and I'll sit and listen, and what I get to take away is up to me, and what you present is up to you. And okay, here's my little lesson in my daughter's a teenage girl, so I joke with my daughter, and I come through and I chat with them, and I said, listen, I had my teenage girl experience about internet bullying that she would always tell me about, what goes on and stuff. So one day I'm looking at this Instagram thing, and you get into this rabbit hole of videos, and I'm watching all these stupid things, and I see one. I never comment, never. I never put it in, and like an idiot, I decided this day that you know what, I have something worthwhile to say, and I'm going to throw it into the community. Yeah. And it was a terrible scenario. It was outside of a school, so I think, okay, I'm a school guy, and it was a shooting where a lady had interacted with the shooter, and she had pulled a gun out of her purse, challenged the shooter, and everybody's praising. And I thought, oh my gosh, there was kids all over the place. The guy was stealing a purse, and I'm thinking, give him. So I type in, I put in, oh my gosh, just give him the purse, keep everybody safe, let the police deal with it.
Yeah.
So I dropped that comment into the Instagram feed under this video. The next day, it's like, holy cow! I must have, someone's really liking one of my photos. I've got literally hundreds of interactions. I go, what's this about? And I go in and I'm checking, and I am getting slaughtered online. You will not, in my county, you will not pry that gun out of my dead hand. Oh my gosh, like things like, take off your heels, and nobody's taking that in my community. Oh my gosh, you deserve to be shot. Good for the woman, and like just this, like there was no conversation. It was just a hammering down, and I thought, okay, wait a minute, that's the part of the world that I don't understand. I don't function well in, and I don't want to be part of. And it was just so quickly deleting my comment and disappearing from the world was my bit of my lesson. And I, quietly back away. And it was just that idea that it couldn't be. Well, why would you think that? Is this there? Do you know what I see? My opinion here would be this, or something. It seemed to be, what could be a dig, what can be getting into it, and you can't. I don't think you can maintain that when you're going around and being exposed to different cultures and moving around the world. I think you're forced to accept the fact that people do things differently. Yeah. We're watching, of course, right now with the COVID situation going on, how the world is handling the COVID situation in different ways in different countries. And I won't get into the, who started whatever, but we know, China was in there and with Wuhan and what's going on, but the response of the community inside, my experience here, I live in a compound. There's about, about 16 buildings, 20-story buildings in my compound. It's a beautiful compound with gardens and waterfalls. It's just lovely. But we get locked inside of there. Each day we would have these visitors, as I said before, come to our door to take our temperatures. Each day, everybody's got masks on and they're wearing goggles and head coverings. But you can see them here, and they're smiling at you. They're trying to interact with us with their little bit of English. I'm giving my little bit of Mandarin. We get through this process, and they're all celebrating with us that we're done our quarantine. I'm getting WeChat messages from them saying, thank you for participating. Thank you for helping out. Thank you for being part of this. 2 weeks after we're done in quarantine, we're invited to a TV show hosted by the physician who's responsible in our district, Chongqing district, for the medical care and watching over supervision, with the council making the decisions in the Chongqing district. And it was a bunch of 50, 60-year-old physicians sitting in the front row. And Janette and I are hosted on the show and talking, and we're not understanding most of what's going on around us. But the smiles and the appreciation on the faces, the gifts of flowers, talking, and they just wanted to thank us for being part of the community effort to bring this under control and to keep everybody safe. And it was just, like just that personal side and the friend, and they know that it was not convenient for us to stay in our apartment for 14 days. It's not. It's a hard thing not to step outside of your apartment. I ran a 10K in my apartment. It's 666 laps of my apartment to do a 10K. And we did our own little get crazy things, but the Chinese people, the medical professionals outside, the security guard, the guy that came to pick up our garbage each day, all would try to interact, and they realized, hey, this is not hard, but stick with it, be part of the effort here. And like I say, everybody wore their mask, did their thing, and the community's open. And you see how the world has come to it in different ways that are acceptable in their communities. But that's part of our learning experience here, is that something that they do have is that they are going to get behind a government decision, and everybody's going to do what they have to do. And they did an amazing job of it.
Well, I love that, because it's not always easy. I mean, I've lived that life that you're living right now, and it's not always easy, but I do believe sometimes you have to move overseas, move somewhere else to find perspective. And I think that's a lot of what you're going through right now, is it puts it into perspective of, how things can be handled, how, nobody's loving this. Not one person on the planet right now is loving this, right? So but there's perspective to it. And at the end of the day, no matter, if you look like you and I do, or if you're, in China or wherever, we're all in this, in the same boat, and it's just a matter of what's gonna, perspective is such a huge thing. And yet I look at it, because I have been in your shoes, not during the pandemic, obviously, but so much of it makes sense. Sometimes you have to step back to move forward. And I think that's what's kind of what you're going through right now. I think, appreciating adversity, appreciating different cultures, and there's not always one way. And I think that's what we all get so hung up on sometimes, is that there's only one way, and my way, and only my way. Not at all. There's perspective, and that's what you're going through. And I applaud that. So.
Yeah, it's, back to the book I said, that has China One, you go through it and look at different ways of handling the economies and different things and approaches that we've had sort of in Western society of going out and sort of, they'll call it the book of proselytizing, where you think you've got to go into someone else's environment and fix it for them. And if we could get them to be our way, they would be so much better. If they could only see it our way, if they could do their finances the way we do their finance, and you go, you know what? I'm here, even if, they're doing it their way, and things are looking good. I'm not going to go across the whole spectrum of things, but it's just like, okay, they have their way of managing their society and doing things. And like I say, I've enjoyed the interactions with the people I've had here. The only thing I wish is that my Mandarin was stronger, so I could sit down and have genuine interactions with some of the people my age or older, and sit down. I'd like to hear more about the history of what the community was like. I get some of it through a common friend, Ben, we both know. And he provides these Shanghainese, and he tells me some of that history, and we sit down and chat. Great guy. But you become so interested in how they got to where they are, and the change in Shanghai. Like, oh my gosh, the across from your apartment where you used to look out is now how many buildings there? 1, 2, 3, 4 buildings. One's about 30 stories, a Soho building, and like in the 5-year history that I've been here, they've taken down a whole block, dug it into the ground, raised it out, and it's now wide open of an art gallery, a business building, a new mall, and it's gorgeous. But it's just like, people talk about, oh my gosh, you just see how busy the city is going. It's nothing compared to the Chinese scale of where whole neighborhoods are resurrected, and it's, oh my gosh, change into an area. Now some of that is bad, that you lose the culture, but it's usually us on the outside looking at it saying, oh, I love that the good pictures and the quaint villages stuff here. And for them, sometimes it's okay. Now we're getting, our plumbing updated and things, modern facilities. So it's, I don't think I could give a full opinion on it, but it's but Shanghai is a city there, change is going at a breakneck speed.
Well, yeah, it's different, but it's not wrong. Right. And I think that's the perspective. Yeah, that's how they do it. And it's not wrong. It's just the way it is. So I totally appreciate that. Let's move on just a little bit. Let's I want to dive deep into this because you are an expert and then some. But let's talk about positives and negatives about living and working internationally. What do you kind of take on that? What's your take on that?
Working itself, like I find it harder. Like if I went just professionally on the working side of things, it's easier to maintain and develop higher standards back in our system when you have the same people who are going to be in the system for 30 years, and you have 5-year review cycles of the same people. Even back home professionally, like my school board would have a whole group of people who would test, who would specialize, whether it be math or science, and they develop new philosophies and ideas, and then they'd be reviewed across the province and tested. And we don't have those sort of resources. So in certain of those ways, we still internationally, we rely on the outside world with those resources to develop and move some things along. On the other end of it, you also have the ability to make change. And that's what I love in my role. Like, if we're sitting and there's a group of us, I believe very much in leading from the middle. Like for us, this will mean a conversation with teachers, a conversation with parents and people around us, and to say, okay, we need to change something at our school. It can be affected very quickly. Whereas maybe in my provincial board, it would be something I'd have to wait for a government mandate to come down to a board mandate to my school. So it's more rigid here. I have more flexibility, as do all the staff, to make change and make things happen. So I feel that, like, I guess, I don't know, like I really feel like my sense of efficacy, like I can really make a difference more where I am. I always had it in the classroom. I believe a teacher is essential inside the classroom, and you can make a world of change. I've always 100% believed that, and teacher efficacy is critical. And to be a good teacher, you have to believe that. You have to believe that you make a difference to those kids, because you make a difference both ways. If you're not into your classroom, if you're not into the relationships of your children, you need to know those kids. You need to know what's interesting to them, what's exciting, what's not.
Yep.
Internationally, like as a principal in the school, I can get more into that, into the community, and make differences, I think, than I could back home. But at the same time, yeah, I think I don't know if I see it completely as negative. I just differences back and forth, like positively, like, geez, I could take the easy side as how I'm spoiled completely, and our school, our board treats us super well. I have all kinds of opportunities. I can remember my first year as a VP in Ontario. Everybody excited, and we had a professional development weekend come up, and it was special. We were going to go overnight. We had a 2-day retreat for the administrators, and we went to a hotel. I think it was about an hour and a half away, and spent a night there. And now I get on an airplane and I fly to Singapore for 4 days, and I get to now the benefits being I get to interact with principals from all over the world. We sit there, we can talk, we spend the day with each other. They're bringing in resources from around the world. Some of them being American, or they're out of Europe, they're out of Asia. These are resources coming in together to build our systems, and it's the same thing. There's always 100 good answers. A good leader will say no to a lot of good things to focus in their efforts, but it's just the exposure, I think. And I'm spoiled at the school I'm at, and it's not every school overseas, but at the school we're at, we're certainly super well resourced. That's not an issue. The children that I get here are honestly, it's you start to appreciate the things. I was more of an intermediate teacher growing up. I enjoyed that middle school group of kids, and now I'm really enjoying the interactions with younger kids. And we just have such a dynamic school body. But watching these kids, it's best example would be a soccer game that used to run at recess. In my second year, we noticed a soccer game going on, and it was the girls playing in the field. They'd made this big rush. We want our girls' space in the field. We agreed that they should have that option. So the one field cleared out, and the girls ran their own soccer game, and the kids run the game. And we're watching and standing one day and going, just sort of realizing, wait a minute, they've organized a game, and it was the Europeans versus the Asians. And we're like, okay, wait a minute, is this,
Yeah.
this is not how we wanted to see. This isn't what we envisioned at our school. This isn't, we didn't want to see it that way. Now the girls had made those decisions on their own, and we watched for a while, and everybody seemed to be okay with it. At the end, it ended up one team was sort of dominating a little bit, and we challenged the girls to say, listen, is there another way that you can do this? And the adults start getting involved, and we think, oh, how can we fix this? Which for me, I find on the playground is generally a mistake. The kids generally are pretty great at making playground rules and setting up playground structures. Beyond the harm, hurting each other, they're pretty good. And I generally discourage teachers from getting involved in the looking to us odd rules that kids make for their games. And the girls had gone through and agreed. We never got down to the idea that, wait a minute, I'm seeing all the Europeans over here and all the Asians over here. And they said, we agree. And they did it more on the games. The outcomes weren't always as competitive as they could be. It wasn't as much fun. They're getting a little tired of it. And they found a random way they made out, and they started picking out their own. And these kids mix. And so you got the kids, and they're learning each other's languages and cultures, and they're mixing up based on activities. And I got gymnastics group over in the corner who's from all over the world. And like, the kids and the exposure that you have to genuine, honest children and their thoughts and stuff coming from the background they're coming from is just, it's incredible. Incredible.
Well, that I love that. I love that, and I totally agree with it, because I saw that when I was over there as well, and that kind of brings me up to my next question, because I do want to get. Obviously, I'm a little biased, but SCIS is truly, it really is a great school for many reasons. But is it still up to about 40 countries represented?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The reason I bring that up, and it's kind of piggybacking on what you just talked about, but I did have right before we went on, I had someone wanting to know, in terms of with 40 countries represented at a school, right? With regards to ethnic sensitivity, is it taught in the curriculum, or is it just taught in general? I mean, how do you handle blending all those 40 different nationalities? How does that go in terms of? I mean, we're in a situation right now globally. Things are a little bit odd, right? So it's just a matter of figuring out how to blend those sensitivities towards culture, and that's one thing I loved about being overseas, is the blend of culture. My favorite part, and I'm just going to quickly go off. I wasn't there very long. I was there 2 years. I would love to come back. I mean, it was a situation I had to be home after my 2 years. But the one thing that my greatest love of my job there was being able to meet and greet those families moving in, because I could understand where they were coming from. Didn't matter what country they were coming from. I meant the understanding of transitioning from, home country to new culture. I love that. So how does SCIS handle that ethnic sensitivity? How is it taught? How, in terms of global issues, how does everybody get along?
We're learning, and as is everybody, and I have a lot of help with some people around me. But it's like, we've always had a good community. It's a super friendly community. Shanghai Community International School is community. Like, that word should be bolded and an oversized font in the middle of it. And I'm sure we're more than, I'm thinking more like 50 nationalities now.
Okay.
But as we go through, we look at, it was always part of our curriculum. Part of the primary years program is learn a profile, and being caring, being respectful, being a risk taker. All those things have always been part of our culture. And we assumed that would take care of things like equity and inclusivity and things. And it doesn't. Just being nice, just being good, just being friendly. It doesn't take care of it. And as the teachers and the leaders in the school, we have more of a duty to make sure that it's part of our conversations. It's not always there. We have some kids that come in sometimes, and there are challenges to, where they're coming from, their ethnicity, and those conversations. And we're realizing we have to structure those, and we have to make them conscious parts of conversations every day. And we're looking too at the diversity of staff as challenging. We need to be more diverse as a staff. That's a real thing. So we're thinking, okay, in our hiring, like everyone else, the same conversations going around. It's like, are we being as diverse and inclusive in our hiring practices as we can be? When geez, I'm, I go to leadership conferences. I'm looking across all these usually gray, gray,
Hey, hey.
gray.
Okay,
Yeah,
I
there we
got
go.
you.
See, it's a sign of hard work.
Yeah.
Uh,
I'll take.
you'd see these gray-haired white men generally
Yeah.
all over the place, and that really does have to change. And so, no, we are making it. We're bringing it in as part of the conversation with our parent group, our staff group. We're bringing some uncomfortable conversations to people sometimes, and it's not something that. That we own just in North America. These different biases and exclusions come from all over the world, and everybody's coming with their own suitcase of perspectives to our environment. So you have to be really respectful and gentle how you bring them in, but you have to bring those conversations in there. You need to be talking about in inclusion. You need to be talking about equity in your school. It needs to be in our literature. Kids need to be seeing it at the front of the classroom. So it's something that in the last year or so, year and a half, we've realized that it's got to be an effort. You can't just sit back and say, generally, I think we're pretty good people and we're pretty understanding and we got a great community. It's something that has to be a conscious, targeted, and organized effort, which is now we have a committee put together and conversations are being structured in the school. We had a few special nights last year where we start bringing those conversations, but it needs to be part of our daily who we are. Yeah. So we're being more intentional about it for sure.
That's great. No, and I can definitely vouch for the fact that SCIS is truly community based. I mean, like I said, I was there 2 years, but I saw it every day. People that came in, the way everybody kind of worked with each other and blended together. It truly is a community based school system, period. So, and I love that about the place. So let's, speaking of SCIS, this is such a question that, I mean, I've been back in the States and still in the educational world. I stepped back this last year, but I've been a part of education pretty much my adult life. Let's be honest, but I've seen how it was handled here in the States. I've read about how it was handled in other cultures, but you were kind of the frontier in terms of the pandemic and handling the pandemic within the international school. Because correct me if I'm wrong, but it's my understanding that you guys, and I totally understand this because I've been there, but you guys went to maybe go on vacation for Chinese New Year and the pandemic hit and everything got shut down and a lot of people were stranded. You were stranded in Australia, stranded, I want to say, in Australia, yeah. Right? Yeah.
It was hard. It was very hard.
It was hard. Yeah. Because now that as soon as you said that, I remember you sending me pictures and I was like, yeah, that's tough. It's tough, right?
Yeah.
But in terms of how SCIS responded to the pandemic throughout this whole entire second half of the school year and even now, because it's my understanding you guys are still the ECE, which a lot of people watching maybe not know. It's the younger school. How has SCIS battled this? How have you guys gotten through this year?
It's been exhausting, and you just don't. You just can't put your finger on it, but it's a sense of it's ambiguity. Like it just there isn't clear answers to things. You're constantly waiting for a clear answer, a decision to meet some line or some standard that the next thing happens or things change and it doesn't come. Like I say, we were overseas with Chinese New Year, so our staff was all over the world. Our families were all over the world, and we stopped on-campus learning. On that Monday, we sort of took a 24-hour hold on, and teachers had the opportunities to meet, and we went live to online learning on the Tuesday. Wow. So I'm hearing these struggles all over the place, and I was like, oh my gosh, the mountains that our teachers climbed in such a short time. It wasn't a perfect product on the Tuesday. By all means, we did surveys with parents and staff, and it was exhausting. Our first 2 weeks were killing people on both sides. The parents and the kids were doing far too much, and the way lessons were coming out wasn't effective. So we started leaning more to live learning with teachers' faces in the screens. They wanted to hear their teacher's voice. They wanted to see their teacher's face. We evolved through that. And then at some point, we got about 2 months, not 2 months, 7-8 weeks. Yeah, I guess 2 months. And it's time to start we're worried now about borders closing, and so you've got everybody all over the world, and you're starting to hear borders closing, and this country's shutting down, and this country's shutting down, and we're worried. Okay, we're coming. And like China is going to shut its borders, and so we put a call out. So teachers doing a wonderful job. They're all over the world, functioning with kids all over the world on different technology platforms. Some had access to tech, some didn't. Some had limited access. Some had parents at home to help. Some didn't. It was just as many scenarios as you can, but we're all fighting through it. And then comes the additional part of, at some point, we're going to have to transition back to on-campus learning, and we got to be ready for that. And it was tough because the initial statement to staff was to shelter in place where you feel safe, and which was a very respectful statement of the board of the school to make. They're taking care of their employees, and they also get decisions. It is their life. They are living somewhere. So sometimes we forget and just to put the demand of the teacher in the classroom, but this is their life. We got lots of teachers with small children and things, and if they felt more safe being somewhere else, then they were given the right to do that. They had to continue work and provide lessons and support their children, their students, and do that. So we got watching this narrowing window of the Chinese border, and so at a point we made a strong recommendation to come back. The timing was incredibly close, and we had people scrambling to get in airplanes. We had staff do things that I would never, ever, ever, ever have asked staff in previous years to do. We had people taking these ridiculous flights with layovers, 15 hours, and then actually coming into Shanghai, and then they'd have to test and be quarantined, go through quite a very stringent, very, very stringent process, meeting people in full hazmat type of things and being sorted and categories, and then put on buses and taken off to testing in hotels, and we had everybody go through that, and like basically it was in some cases 30 to 40 hour processes to get from from taking off to their apartment, and some people longer than that, and it was just like stuff you would never ask someone to do for employment. But we got them back in and going. So then transitioned over, and now we're still doing online learning here, and we're getting pretty good at it. It's working, and people are starting to be back in the same time zones anyway, getting a little bit better. We're given permission we're waiting all the time for a government permission to open the school. So the government says yes. So we go ahead, and we had our opening, and the protocols that were in place, it was amazing. So if I enter, and it's no different for kids, let's say students. So a student comes in the morning, they enter, they approach the front. We have one main entrance at the front of our gate. If they arrive on bus, which most of our kids do, they have to present a form that they signed by parent each day, that the parent has taken their temperature and that the child is healthy. The parent signs off. They present that to the bus. They're allowed to get on the bus. On the bus, they have their temperature taken again by the bus helper. They get off. They come into the school. We distance them as they travel across the playgrounds. They come in, they line up. They have their temperature taken again before they're allowed to actually enter the building. And during their interactions of the day, as they come and go at recesses and lunch, they pass through temperature, heat sensors, and temperature checks, and they have their temperature taken several times throughout the day. If there was any suspicion of illness, it gets reported immediately to the nurse, who follows up a temperature check. If there was a temperature during the day, they would actually be required to go to a clinic, a COVID clinic, and be tested. Wow. So one student, any suspicion, they would have to go do that. And then they'd have to have clearance by the hospital and our school medical people before they'd be allowed back in the school to start attending again. And there was time boundaries in place. Like our kids, so it was funny, I saw someone post a joke the other day about, this is what classrooms are going to look like. And it's like, that's our cafeteria. Have plexiglass shield around two sides.
Yeah, I saw that.
And the kids, they have a little place they hang up their masks. The kids are wearing masks, and they eat inside of sort of a protected shield around them. Protocols of cleaning constantly throughout the day. Our playground, all the ropes and things is cleaned twice a day with bleach, and everything gets done. So the protocols are serious, and people get them done. It happens, and we send the kids out. So it's been we were quite happy to wrap up and finish the year and get everybody away, and everybody was exhausted. And I say a lot of it is you're not in control. When is this going to start? When is this going to happen? And you don't have answers for people. And there's been a ton of ambiguity. And even going into the fall, we're not quite sure how all the things are going to work yet.
That was my next question. Yeah. What is there a plan yet, or how's that working for the fall?
We're assuming we'll continue with the same health protocols and things going forward. We've been Shanghai has been free of like human cases for quite a period of time. So there's nothing going on here. The only interactions you might see are people coming and going outside the country. There is a small amount of traffic coming and going, gets caught there. But really in the community, it's not present. So when see people talk about letting up because there's only 150 or 200 or 300 or 500 new cases a day, we're very slowly opening up with masks and protocols. Like my mask is usually close by here, and we're with nothing happening right now in Shanghai. So we'll go back. There'll still be health protocols in place, and everything is there. If there is a problem, if there is a slight uptick in transmission, all those walls and protocols are going to come into place, and they've got like different levels of health standards, and it can change overnight. What happens? I even have I show you on my phone, I've got a health code that I recently did a little bit of a visit inside of China here, and I had to show that health code several times in my traveling around to say that I am indeed healthy. Yeah.
That's great. Which actually brings me right up to the next question. Let's say a family is finding out right now today that they're going to be moving to Shanghai, or maybe what kind of advice would you give to said family? Like what type of things would you say? Because I mean that's the downside, is it because it's such an amazing opportunity, yet we have COVID right now, so it's kind of a double-edged, I guess, question, because the normality of it. What type of advice would you give? And yet with the COVID situation, what should people be afraid? I mean, what type of advice would you give in general, I guess, to families that are currently or about to soon be moving to Shanghai or overseas in general?
Yeah, I think if I deal with COVID one first, the COVID situation, it was funny. In January, February, we were sheltering outside of China because it was the COVID situation was a China Wuhan situation, and it was like so we were worried about that, and so people were feeling safe being outside. Now I feel the most safe being inside of Shanghai. Yeah. I know the protocols are everywhere. I know the temperature is being taken. I have to pass in my compound. I get my temperature taken every time I come and go. I know the community is watching and monitoring and doing what they should do. I walked into Takashimaya Mall across the corner from me the other day. I know people are getting a little bit more loose because there's been no cases in Shanghai, person-to-person transmission. Out in public, you'll still see them close by. When we went into the mall, everybody had the masks on. Once we got into door spaces, there was no question about it. So I know that's all there. So actually, it's flipped over to now where my children are in and parents are in Canada, and I hear about protocols, and it's a sort of a looser version of it, but cases there, whereas here right now. So that part very safe. They've put protocols and stuff in place. And I know even in Beijing, they had a little bit of an uptick a while ago, but then I think something like 60,000 tests were administered in the first 48 hours. Like everybody in that neighborhood was shut down, tested, and it was within 2 weeks, they were opening back up and doing what they should do. Overseas is, as a family, like we broke all the rules. Everybody asked me at that time, what's the right age to take a child across? Well, we messed it up everywhere. Our first trip to Hong Kong, I had if my wife was listening, I'm going to mess it up somewhere, a 4-year-old, a 10-year-old, 14-year-old, and a 17-year-old.
Wow.
So my 4-year-old just starting school, she was in junior kindergarten. And then to the top, my daughter, we took her overseas for her senior year. So
how'd she like that?
She is thankful for it. We didn't take anybody kicking and screaming. We did all the conversations and really did a year of prep work beforehand. So anyway, we've got a close family that's quite supportive of each other. but like she is so thankful. Her senior year was amazing, and she made friends and connections. Since then, she had a great year. She went back to Canada, did her university. She worked in Korea for a while. Actually, I had the pleasure after she's now a teacher, after she became certified, of hiring her in the Middle East, and she worked in our school. Yeah, nepotism at its best there, and hired her for a couple of years, and able to clear off her student debts and stuff within a couple of years there. And now she's a teacher back in just at the edge of Toronto now. But it's, I tremendous value in it. It's not going to be easy, and it's not home. It's not your neighborhood. It's not if your dreams of green grass and white picket fences. It is going to be different, and there are tons of wonderful and great reasons. I don't think it's everybody, but I think it's for more people than they think.
Oh, totally. Yeah. I've said this all along on the show. Yeah. If you allow yourself the chance to truly appreciate it and I guess explore it and take it for what it's worth, it's an amazing opportunity. And sometimes you don't necessarily realize it the first year or even into the second year, but if you allow yourself the opportunity to just dive right in and appreciate it for what it's worth and respect the people that are there and realize everybody there is in the same situation, which I always loved. People are more than willing to help out because of that, because everybody's in the same situation. So I totally agree with you. It's a situation where if you just allow yourself, if you go in closed-minded and you stay that way, chances are you're going to have a crappy experience. But, 9 times out of 10, it's such an amazing opportunity. You don't always see it right away, but if you just allow yourself that opportunity to be open to whatever it is that you're getting into, I mean, there's so many people there to help. It's such a, I can't, obviously I'm biased. I grew up that way, and then I went back as an adult that way. So I have a bias, I'm totally biased, but that said, it wasn't always easy, even for someone like myself. I went overseas when I was 8 years old, and I came back at 17, or actually 7, and I came back at 17, and then I went back over as an adult. Totally different experiences, and yet both had their perks, both had their issues. But I still, if you can allow yourself the opportunity to just dive right in and be open to the situation and the opportunity, it's such. You're going to be thankful. There's no way around it. You're going to be thankful. So,
and there is no magic career thing. I think if you're in a job, you want to come over with a skill set that's valuable. But at the same time, we have kids who come right out of out of university. When I was working in Kuwait, I'm kids, so they're 20, 21, and I, at the end of an interview, I remember doing interviews in Iowa, and sitting with someone, offering them a job, and them sitting on the phone calling Dad if it's okay if they take this job. And I'm thinking, and then you're sitting there realizing, like, holy cow, like, okay, this is a big thing in you and your family and what's going on. However, I rarely have people gone overseas and done their things and trips. I can't. In the exposure, I've been, across a couple schools and new staff every year. I know very few cases that went back because this isn't for me. I know some people who have gone back and settled back at home and had different things they wanted to carry on, whether it was get married, start families, do different things. And that's fine, because that's part of your life adventure too. But it's worthwhile in some scale. I do think we, need to push off from our dock. If you're going to sail, you got to let go of the dock. You got to untie and let go of some things. Yeah. And the ones that I see that struggle more want to tie and compare to home. And if you got to let go and realize that, no, it's not going to be like my home back in wherever. It is going to be different. They are going to present new things to me and challenges. And just for me, there's amazing people and amazing experiences all over the world. And I'm happy that I'm getting to see a bunch of them.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's not for everybody. Let's be clear in saying that. But it's I guess if you can just allow yourself, because the worst part of it all and maybe you agree or don't agree, but that's cool too. But the worst part of it all is that initial, maybe first month, second month, the shock value, the culture shock value, learning that it isn't like home, and that's okay. You just have to allow yourself to maybe grieve a little bit, but at the same time push through, because I mean, there's so many opportunities. You just talked about it. How many different countries have you been to since you've been in Shanghai?
I don't.
Exactly. Yeah, you don't even have to answer that. Like, your face just said it all.
A lot.
So yeah,
A lot.
even in the 2 years I was there, I mean, just the opportunities I was given, presented to me, just by simply being there and allowing myself the opportunities that came my way. I mean, it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy leaving home. It's never easy leaving home. It doesn't matter if you're 7 years old or you're 20 something, right? 30 something. But there's so much opportunity to better yourself professionally, better yourself as a person, appreciate culture. I'm totally biased, right? I'm not the norm here in the States, I guess, but it's just a situation that if you were presented that opportunity, try it. It might not be for you. You might end up being over there 20 plus years. So I totally agree with you. I just, the thing that I have always taken away is just, I was so blessed at how many different people from different places, the culture that I got to see at such a young age, the opportunities, the things that people dream about. I got to see those things at 7 years old. Ironically, I never had been to the Great Wall until I was in Shanghai, right? So, but that was the one thing on my bucket list that I couldn't wait to do. I never made it to Shanghai or to Beijing until I was in Shanghai. But just the opportunity to meet people from different cultures, and we talked about this earlier, just seeing different perspectives. I truly believe that that's the biggest takeaway I ever had from being overseas, and I still plan on getting back there. I'm married now, and the wife's okay with it, as long as she's got an opportunity as well. But it's the opportunity far outweighs the negative side of things, and there is fear. I'm not going to just say like hop on a plane and everything's great. That's not how it goes, right? So go ahead.
No, we all have different ways of dealing with it. It's unique, but it's and I I mean, there's some things that I know I'll remember the end of my life, like walking in, walking in through Petra, and we a late night tour through there. Okay, we have those incredible, the Blue Mosque in Istanbul, like the Great Wall of China. Like you have those travel things that are like that, and then there's the 9 to 10 things that happen every single day, and it's like, even when we were in quarantine, my neighbor, Chinese neighbor here, Ray's a great guy. Very international. He speaks English, which allows us to communicate clearly. But he left during quarantine. He left coffees outside our door. So when the garbage man came, there'd be coffee sitting outside that I can grab my favorite coffee and coming in. On the street, we are the minority here, and so sometimes you get a little bit more attention than you certainly would back home. I'm average Joe back home, maybe slightly less.
Me too.
Yeah. And then when I'm here, there are times and opportunities that I get, and interactions. People have interactions because you are different. We got away for a hotel sort of staycation thing, and in the hotel, like people wanted to get some interactions, and I could hear them flip over from Mandarin, like as simple as getting my back to my coffee, my Americano in the morning. People flipping over to their English to show me, for one, how well they know English, and embarrass me that I don't know Mandarin. And helping me out, but it's just those little interactions. My wife has got a great big head of blonde hair, and it was funny. The little girls, and I'm sure there's some Disney connection there, maybe, who want to stop and will come and stand out. We're having breakfast, and they'll come and stare at Janette and say, "See your hair?" And it's a million interactions like that create special opportunities that we get constantly, that just constantly makes life feel special. And the day-to-day interactions I get with staff and with Chinese staff, or not, like you just can't think the same way when you get exposed and you work and you live around people on a regular basis and you become part of the society. You just can't think the same way about it.
It totally changes you, and for the better, I would like to think. Even I look back at my time in Shanghai, and I think about my wife now, when she came to see me for those 10 days she was there before I came back stateside. it made me laugh because even the negative that she experienced, and she's someone that got to, she experienced the world, and she didn't grow up the way I did, but her mom worked for the airline, and I've said this a few times on the show. She was able to go global, and she saw different cultures, and I'm super appreciative of that. But when she came to Shanghai, like, she loved it. First of all, she loved it, and we had a great time. And her only negative was, like, she got kicked out of a taxi. Like, well, that means you're a local. Like, well done. Like that, you made it. You've arrived. So I mean, little things like that. Like she had a little Chinese car. I was working, and she was gonna go tour the city and see some things. It's one of my favorite stories that she ended up, like, showing the taxi driver where she wanted to go. She was in the cab maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops, and all of a sudden he just pulled over and said, "No, I'm not going." You and I can understand that, because whether it was dinner time or whether it was something, he just didn't want to go. Yeah, done. And she was so, like, taken aback at first, and I'm like, no, that just means you've arrived. They respect you enough to, like, kick you out of the cab. So it's, I mean, little things like that, I mean, to the layman don't make any sense, and yet to us, you and I, like, totally makes sense, and we get it, and that's a badge of honor. You wear it as a badge of honor, and sure. I love that. So yeah. So,
but I have friends back home, and I go back and I get my friends together for dinners, and we do things that those connections are important to me.
Mm-hmm.
But you would always hear the things and those lines, that maybe fit maybe 10 years ago, whatever, but the Chinese products and the knockoff and the copies and this sort of thing. And having one of those friends come over and spend a couple of weeks with me here, and taking him on a trip to Beijing. We went up and taking him down to the Hongqiao rail station here, and him going down and looking across the high-speed rail system of these jet-like high-speed trains traveling over 400 kilometers an hour, and realizing, like, this massive, beautiful station, super efficient process, like on the second the train pulling out, these smooth railways with, basically stewardess service on the train, and big full-size bathrooms. Like, it was clean and gorgeous and efficient and everything. And having him now going back to Ontario and probably being one of the strongest advocates for what I'm doing and living there, I remember even saying it towards the end of our visit, going, "Kev, I get it. I get it. Now I get it." We're at a restaurant on the Bund, overlooking the Bund is beautiful down by the river, and it's gorgeous. One of probably the most dramatic skylines, cityscapes that you can imagine. And you're sitting there, on one side is very traditional European side, on the other side is futuristic looking cityscape with the second tallest building in the world, and it's gorgeous, it's lit up, it's wonderful. And him and I sitting there having dinner, and he's looking around and going, "Oh my gosh, you are never coming home, are you?" And he goes, it's like, it just a little bit of exposure and showing, and a good friend. We rode bikes back home and did stuff, and we miss each other, and that casual hanging around. But him going, "Yeah, okay, I understand why you're doing this."
Yeah, and I can reciprocate that, because I had a buddy before Emily, my wife, came over. My buddy from Salt Lake came over. Hadn't I think he'd been maybe to Mexico. I don't recall exactly where, but he was trying to get over the first year I was in Shanghai, and then it didn't work out, and he ended up coming over, and same exact story. Like, he ended up, he's a big Disney guy, and so the fact that Shanghai has a Disney and all that, and then we went out with, I think you actually met him, my Chad fireman guy. Yeah. So, but just seeing exactly what I was, completely caught up in the middle of, and being able, it's not always exactly what you perceive things to be, and the fact that they were able to get over there and see it firsthand, they were able to understand my point of view and my perspective. And he totally agreed with you. We ended up, his last night there, we ended up going to one of the rooftop bars overlooking the Bund. And I remember him turning to me and like, "I get it, man. I get why you're here." Same exact situation, from Disney. I mean, he's a huge Disney guy, and I used to give him crap about that anyway. But like, he went to Disneyland. He was there a week, I think, and went to Disneyland 3 times. Whatever works, but same exact thing. But he was there in May, and it was Cinco de Mayo. We went out with Estruth, and we went out to a bar, and we were like having drinks handed to us left and right. He's just like, "Why would you leave? Why? This is awesome. I don't even know these people, and they're handing me free beers left and right." I was just like, "Yeah, welcome to international life, man." So it's there's definitely perks. So, yeah.
Yeah, a fun place. We're never short of fun things going on, and the staff. I mean, the young single staff below me, like, oh my gosh, like I couldn't keep up with them. The events that get planned in a weekend are ridiculous.
Yeah, and it's good. They need that. They need that out too. They need that outlet. So I totally understand that. So having said that, though, let's continue on then. So you're a man of many passport stamps, let's put it that way, right? But is there still a place that you'd like to get to? The travel bug is alive and well. I know you, and I know you, Janette, your wife. But is there still a place that you guys might want to visit or still get to that you haven't yet?
For me, that's the Savannah. Like that initial tug to get over, like we never did. We've gotten sort of Northern Africa, we've done that, but I would love to go out and see the nature and the plains, and the Savannah would be that. So that'd be a trip still out there in the future. But honestly, we've got to the point where I've seen desert, we've walked in desert, we've been in the jungle, we've swum in a coral reef now. We've been on those idyllic island scenes. We've done that stuff, and it's all still amazing. So I don't think I need the big epic one. For me, it's still like a different climate, a different landscape maybe. But we've become really city people too. So hopefully in the Savannah, I can see that. And there's, from the window of a 5-star hotel, if they still do that, I don't know. But so I don't know, but it always is. If you're asking for number one destination, it's home. There's connections, life connections there. There's lots of sites to see, and we will travel all weekend. We will do that. We know this will eventually come to the end, and at that point, we'll probably settle into Southern Ontario and this style of life where now teachers on holiday, like they get on airplanes. It's not like whose place you're going to go hang out. They get on airplanes and they fly. Especially in Asia, it's so easy to fly, so cheap. North America is ridiculous for flying, and here it's relatively cheap. They'll get a hotel and go somewhere and be on a beach and enjoy themselves. And but that destination connection with things is still a small town of 800 people with a little mill and waterfalls, and there Otterville is at. Both of our moms are there, so that's that's always the number one destination, which we're missing this summer because of the lockdown here.
Yeah, I was gonna say. So explain that to people that are watching. I get it, just because I've been following it. But you guys are not allowed to leave and then come back, or what's the status right now in Shanghai?
No, well, the transportation isn't there. There's very limited flights going out. There's a few chartered flights rumored to be done. So really it's locked out, and it's also getting back in. So you have no secure route coming and going. And then there would be on the other end, of course, the parents are older, so we should be quarantining at the other end, which in Canada is a voluntary quarantine. Like I know we have to report it and stuff, but nobody's coming to check on you. Back coming in, we would be locked down again for 14 days. But there is no means. Like we have staff from North America trying to get in, and we can't get them in. We have staff here who have jobs elsewhere next year who can't get flights out at this point.
I didn't think of that.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the whole world's on hold. I've got a couple of staff in the fall that are just I think that, like say, our staff have got caught overseas, so most of them in the States, one in the UK, one in Canada, but it's just like you're trying to get in, and so those are ones checking flights daily, is looking, and there's nothing, there's no options for them.
Is there summer school going on right now? ECEs, are they done, or they
It's over. We did it for a couple of weeks afterwards, and the intent of that was to provide more contact, some learning time beyond the school year for the parent and student community, and to create a chance to close up a year, which has been very irregular, draw it to a proper conclusion and stuff together. And it did that. It was a great deal of fun, but two weeks was by far enough. And then at that point, we have to close down for the summer. At this point, staff can't even go onto the campus without special permission now. Yeah. So.
Okay, let's talk Shanghai anyway. Like obviously I haven't been there in a couple of years, but how is it? What's new? Are they what's the same, different, everything? Like especially right now, like are you allowed to just go out and go to bars or restaurants? How's that?
Yeah, it's a little embarrassing to say, but yeah, we can. We've been out to restaurants. We've been to the Bund. The tourist traffic, of course, is not there. Janette and I went to Disney. I heard Florida Disney is opening today. Is it today? I think.
I think
And
yesterday, but either way, yeah.
but they have very limited. Jeanette and I went there last week, stayed at a hotel there, went out at the, what's the restaurant? Cheesecake Factory. I went out for dinner, had a great time, but the tourist population is not there. So the numbers, it was very easy. No lines at anything, went in. So it's that world population that's normally touring here. They're not here. The city is always changing. The construction didn't seem to pause one bit. I got new buildings up in the neighborhood. They run very good, clean construction sites, but they're everywhere. So that progress seems to be continuing on. New subway lines, new. Yeah, just about everything. But it's a full open. Seems to be full open. I can't think of any restrictions of things I can't do at this point. Now, having said that, I have to show my phone with my QR code in a number of different places. Masks would be protocols. You don't have to wear a mask when you're eating, you're in a shop or something, you wouldn't. But they're around. And I know if there is a rumor, if there is a case coming, we will quickly retreat back to closing facilities. And I think most of us are expecting something along that version in the fall.
How are Westerners or Europeans or anyone that looks like you and I do? How are they treated right now? Is it all good, or is it?
I think it is. Everybody. There was little bits of times, and I think it was sort of on more political, social moves. Like at one point, I think for China, it had gone through, like, especially in Wuhan, like a tremendous amount of effort and hardship to get this under control. Like hardship, the numbers were huge in that area for lockdown, and people are aware of that. And then people did lockdowns here and restricted and masks and temperatures, and they know that. And then. So once it got under control here in Shanghai and broader China, the threat was from people entering in and bringing it in from the inside. So that's what we represented at one point. And you understand that. And there was some local discussions and papers. I had a couple families who, when they returned, had a tough time getting into the area because they were seen as being suspicious that they could be transmitting COVID. And but now it's gone back to the normal Shanghai, quite open and welcome and friendly. Shanghai is, as you know, is quite comfortable with. It's an international city, and foreigners are no real big deal. It's part of life in Shanghai.
You still go to Carrefour and Golden Street? How's all that?
Golden Street is life for us. So it's a walking street for about 4 blocks ahead of us, which is a huge social interaction area and people coming in. And it's out there. And it was funny during the earlier days. And it was funny. We say, there's no way you get kids to wear masks. I can see there's a playground area in the middle with the kids rollerblading and scooters and having fun with the balls and stuff in there. From 2 years up, everybody wearing a mask. It was not a question. And you would see the kids at the playground busy, but every single child there interacting wearing a mask. And it wasn't parents running around chasing them. Oh, put on your mask, put up your, nothing. It was just, they've been taught that that's what you do. And so it's very doable, but they interacted. And but that part is loosening up now. We've been quite a while without some cases, so it's starting to slack off. Although you will still see someone have the mask around their neck or on their arm, they have it with them. So if they get into a more of a restricted, like for us the other day, I had mine down a little bit, but when I went into the mall, I put it back up because now we're close to people and stuff. I couldn't social distance at all.
No, I totally miss Golden Street, and I even miss going to the grocery store over at Carrefour and everything.
Oh, yeah.
We'll talk about that later. But
I have the unfortunate part. It gets delivered to the door.
There you go. Yeah, which is all new to the States because they're doing that here in the States. I mean, it's like I living in Shanghai, I'm like, yeah, this is normal. Seeing a guy on a scooter, yeah.
And then the cash, hearing all the stuff about cashless societies and stuff. I have, other than my first year here, so I've been 4 years probably with not having cash in my wallet, all my money on my phone, and man, I love it. Everything, my Metro card is there. Everything is there, and I love it. Yeah.
Oh, as do I. Like it's the only way I knew for a couple of years, and it's totally normal for me here. So I get it. I love it. So let's talk acclimation to Canada. When you go back, how are you perceived there by even people that have known you way longer than I ever have? Like how is that transition back to Canada? How is that perception of you?
like for their perception, I don't know. I don't know if we're seeing that there, like, because the people we associate generally, we go back, know us already and knew us from a half a lifetime together. And I think they recognize that our experiences are different and see some things. In some ways, our lifestyle got a little more expensive, but yeah, I think they generally interact with us. I'm not that I'm seeing as a notice. Like, I think for us, from our perspective, looking at going back, like, and we talk about that, it's the cost of things. Like, North America is, I know I'm in one of the most expensive cities in the world, but the problem is now I don't need a vehicle, so I'm not filling up a tank of gas every week. I'm not paying car insurance. I'm not making car payments. I'm not. So you take that part out of the life. I happen to be, through my employment, they pay for this apartment around me. I'm not. I'm not forced to pay a mortgage. It's not a tipping culture in most scenarios here. So I'm not. I had a friend who just went back to the States, and she was talking about constantly realizing tipping and taxes and stuff, and she's being shocked by the cost of daily life back home. So there's some of those things I think are going to be challenges for us. I think going back to Canada is going to be hardest is staying put.
Mm-hmm. What about your kids? I mean, they all spent at least some time overseas, and depending on what country they were in. But did they have any issues transitioning back to Canada, acclimation process wise?
Oh, I think we've ruined all of them. It's funny because it's a descending scale of the amount of time they spent overseas from the oldest. My oldest daughter, but she went back overseas herself right away. She only did 1 year of overseas schooling, and then she went back to Korea and to Kuwait to work. And she's now settled in Ontario, doing quite well, married, and she's settled in quite well. But I think if I'd look at her, I would say she's in for the long haul. She'd be open to adventures, I think, but I think she's settled in. The next two are sons, and sort of the oldest son for sure, I think intends to get back overseas and do that. I think he's certainly got the bug. He was actually talking about moving to the States at one point. And I think he still sees himself as a citizen of a broader picture. The next one, I would say he'd be open to it if the right opportunity for him was in another country, which is something I think we challenge as North Americans. Like, if he saw the opportunity to move ahead, or an interesting opportunity for moving to another country would not be a barrier. He would just, that's great, go. My youngest daughter, who spent more of her schooling years overseas than not, who has been, I guess, 12 of her 18 years overseas, 19 now. I don't know. It's too early for her. I know she enjoys the experience, and
where's she at now?
She's in university back in just outside Hamilton, Ontario.
Okay.
And I think she would be the same, that open to whatever the world bring. I too early to tell with her. I don't know if there's that burning passion to work and live overseas. I think she's quite enjoying she's figuring out a new culture for her, which is home to us as Ontario. I think she's still figuring out and seeing that. I think there's always new learnings for her still back home of what it was like there. I think in a way she probably sticks out more than any of us.
I can relate to probably her story right now more than anything, because I left the States at 7 and came back at 17, so I totally understand. Yeah, that's which I'll be curious to see how she views things in about a year or two, if she gets that itch to come back overseas and whatnot. So, but yeah, she's the one of your 4 kids that I actually knew a little bit. I got to meet her and yeah, just with you guys being in Shanghai and whatnot. So I met all your kids actually, but yeah, I totally could relate to your youngest daughter, because that's the life that I lived growing up. So totally understand that. So.
Yeah. Emma, Emma's had a lot of edges rounded off and stuff, and she's an advocate for inclusivity, equity, for gay rights, for everything. food for the planet, for everything.
Mhm.
She's taken on the causes of the world, and I think all of it, quite honestly, legitimately, she's looked at and had many conversations that maybe wouldn't have been brought directly to her if we had stayed at home.
Yeah. No, that's great. But that also is a product of good parents too. So don't sell yourself short there, brother. So
That was my next point.
well, as you should. Well, listen, let's get to the fun part. Well, this has all been fun, but these are questions that have nothing to do with overseas living.
All right.
I just want to just kind of throw a couple at you. Let's talk passions. I know you actually were one of the reasons I got into running, especially when I was in Shanghai, and I'm still doing it. By the way, I've done a couple half marathons and try to pick up any 5Ks or 10Ks I can do at any time. But what other passions do you have? Talk about your passions, man.
Running, say running out there. That's what I need on a regular basis, and actually sit around thinking and dreaming about my next run. Weird, but yes, do that. And been joining some virtual runs online. I love that stuff. For me, really enjoying music. Dabbled with drums a little bit. I got to get back into that, but music for sure. I get, I guess I have to say, even, and this is right, and I don't think if I can see if my wife is listening or not, but certainly working on the relationships. I think as you get older and you realize we have different distance in between it, I think we become more intentional and purposeful in relationships. So one of the passions for that would be sort of building relationships and refining relationships. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's something I guess I never even wrote down, but yeah, you guys are empty nesters now. That's got to be a little bit different. Yeah.
It is so, because I mean, geez, we started having kids pretty well right away, and we've always had kids around. Now it's different. I love adult kids, and the kids are a huge amount of our interactions are driven around the conversations with those four, and we got involved. One son started a company recently. We get involved with him. We have something with each kid that we're tied and interacted to with beyond just being their parent, which I think is key. We've found ways to interfere and tie ourselves into their lives.
No, they need that. You're never too old to still appreciate and need mom and dad. So I totally can relate to that. So good. Well, let's. What about something? Those of us that I know you pretty well, and obviously a handful of people that are watching this probably know you pretty well, but what do we not know about you? What's something that maybe is something that never came up and whatnot? So what do we not know about you?
Oh, geez. I don't know if there's whole things. I don't know if there's any mysteries back there, but I guess I don't know. My not know about me. Mine would be probably the roots that I'm probably farthest away from now. Like I grew up wanting to be the self-sustaining, on the land, kill, grow. Like those guys. Not that swamp peoples. That's a different thing. The wilderness guys and living out there. Yeah. That was my passion. I wanted that. So, and that is so far away from my life now. I see. My brother camps a little bit and stuff, and it just that just doesn't inspire me. So I guess it would be that outdoorness. I was the fisherman, making my own lures, doing stuff like that. Pretend hunting, all stuff like that. Yeah, my wild wilderness side.
That is funny because I only know you as a city boy, so it's hard for me to picture that.
Funny, eh? Yeah.
yeah. No. What about what's the best advice you've ever been given?
This one comes back. You and I think we're pre-chatting about this a little bit. Best advice I would be, I was fortunate to have a very good dad around. Dad who was a patient. I think most people would describe him as a very patient, loving guy. And Dad was. He wasn't the guy to come up with these great big statements, these dadisms, and these quotes. That wasn't Dad. My father-in-law is like that. I could probably name some lines that come to quite quickly, but for Dad, it was a constant message, and his was for me, my age, about 54 years long, is that conversation of the life he led, his faith, his calmness, his I don't want to say in a demeaning way, but his contentness with what you have. And that's what I'm still learning to embrace. But if I could become as content as my father was with life, and content in his faith and surroundings, then there's life as well done.
That's awesome. Yeah, it makes me think of my own dad, because similar. It sounds like you and I had similar dads, and we've talked about that before too. So it's what about regrets? Any regrets so far?
I think a regret would be not having done this sooner. I would have liked to had, actually, okay, I'm in my mid 50s. There's only so many years that they'll see me as being viable candidates for good schools. So I would have done it sooner. And yeah, with the kids and stuff like that. Yeah, probably sooner and a little bit more aggressive. Life in general, just saying yes more often, and let's go. Yeah.
I totally back you up on that. I get that. Yeah, that's awesome. And then the last question, we made it, man. So this is always the one that kind of gets people a little bit, but I know you're a beer guy. You're Canadian, first of all. I think that's in your DNA, right? So you don't have a choice. But I always finish these up by just simply asking, I think I already know where you're going to go with this, but if you could sit down and have a beer and just chat for an hour with anybody, who would it be and why?
If you'd asked me this question a year ago, I'd have given you a completely, I have many historical figures I could talk to. Even now, say my amazement with China and history, I could pick out some characters in Chinese history that I'd want to talk to, some things like that. But having had the year that we've had, that beer would have to go to Dad and I. And it's funny. My dad stopped drinking when I was probably 12 years old, didn't touch a beer. I can remember watching him have his last mousy beer and leaving it on the lawns and not picking up another beer. If I could force him to a beer or a Diet Coke on his end, then that would be him. So if I could get back an hour and do that'd be the man for sure.
It's exactly my answer. That's why I always want to make sure I hear that. Did he ever remind me? I think he did, but did they ever get to come to Shanghai? Your dad, or was that Janette's dad?
And I can only go so far. It's too fresh, but the breathing. Okay, so my dad wrote letters to all of his kids, and if I end it, you just pick up. But
you're good.
He wrote a letter to me, and my letter was about bringing him overseas. My dad was he wanted to be, I knew that in some ways we had conversations extending. Dad was the small town guy. He grew up like walking to school with a rifle over his shoulder, checking traps on the way to school, leaving his rifle at the back of the classroom. He grew up working with his hands, and he's a physical guy, and he grew up on small farms, and he was the small town man in every sense of the word, and in every wonderful sense of it. And we were able to, when we were in the Middle East, we flew him to the Middle East and got to walk around there, and took him to Turkey. And then when he came to, we flew him into Shanghai, and then took him and my mom up to Beijing. And in his letter that he wrote, that I read a month after he had passed, he mentioned that, and to be able to do that, and for him saying this was him living his dreams and imaginations as a small town guy through my life and stuff, that was was really satisfying in a lot of ways, and appreciating that I could to be financially in the situation, but in a life situation, to be in a situation that I can bring that to my dad was just like a winner all the way around. Yeah.
That's what a way to end this, right? And no doubt he was proud of you, man. He was proud of you, and you've definitely done some things and worthy of being proud of. So I think I did meet him. Now that I think about that, I believe I did. So and I can either whether I did or whether I didn't, I know for a fact he was proud of you just through those stories. And that what an awesome thing to have those letters, man. So it's well, listen, we made it. I totally appreciate you doing this, and I sit back and I obviously so much of what you said hits home. It's not just about the Shanghai stuff either. It's just the life you're living right now, man. I can totally relate to it. You are a friend of mine. You will always be a friend of mine. You're also a mentor of mine. I hope you know that too. You are you're one of the good ones, and your wife is equally as good too. And we definitely need to do this more. I miss, not many people are going to understand this, but the SWAT days, right? You and I talked about the SWAT days.
Hey.
Yeah. But definitely miss that. Please say hi to everybody in Shanghai for me that may or may not know me, I guess, but there's still plenty of people left.
I'll do that.
I'm still in constant conversation with a lot of them, but this has been a treat. It's so easy to talk to you. It's like, we talked just last week. So I appreciate that. Thank you for your honesty. Thank you for just being who you are, man. And if there's ever an opening, I'm right here.
Be thinking of Ben Vogel.
Yeah, please be thinking about Ben Vogel. Yeah, no. But I love SCIS. I love Shanghai. I just love that experience and the culture and everything you talked about through these last almost 2 hours. I can relate. It's like looking at my own life, man. So I appreciate that. But like I said, thank you for doing this. You're one of the good ones. Anything else you want to say to the people watching or anybody who, it's kind of how we finish these up.
Ending with Dad is the right way. I think that's a good one for my year. Yeah. So.
Perfect. No, that's a perfect way to end it. And just tell Janette I said hi again. I got to see her a little bit before we jumped on, but thank you for doing this. I truly appreciate it. And those of you that are watching, thank you so much for watching. Please make sure you subscribe to the BenThere channel on YouTube. This is something that's just taken off on a whole different path of whatever I initially wanted this to be, but it's fantastic. So I can't say enough to those that are watching. Kev, I can't say enough to you. Please take care of yourself and stick around because I'm going to end this broadcast right now. But stick around, all right? And you and I will chat just for a minute before we be closed. Thank you all. Be safe, everybody. Just take care of everybody and just enjoy life. Don't be afraid of opportunity. I think that's what we took out of this conversation, Kevin, and I appreciate that. So thank you all. And until next time, which is going to be next Sunday, there are 2 more episodes I've got lined up, and we'll talk about them then. So Kevin Haggith, the lower school principal of Shanghai Community International School, I am honored to call him friend. Thanks for doing this, brother. We'll talk to you soon. Okay? Cheers, everybody.